Hello everyone. I promised you all that I would do a splicing video on how to make the diamond knot ultra sling. I've used this in a few of my videos. I use it all the time for zip lining, for light rigging, for mechanical advantage up in the tree, for limb lifts. I think this little system has a lot of application. The premise behind the diamond knot ultra sling, traditional ultra slings would require the user to take the pinto pulley or block and place it through one of the pockets and then choke the limb as such, which this system still allows that to happen. But if you do that and you install a rigging line through this and you want to move this, you have to pull the rigging line out because you can't pull the rigging line and the pulley through the pocket. So I use a button knot. Most people call it a button knot. I call it a diamond knot. And this diamond knot goes through the pocket like that. And then the knot actually bites on the pocket. So that allows you to leave a rigging line installed consistently and be able to undo the sling and move the sling while your rigging line is still installed. So I've found it extremely useful. It's gotten a lot of use. Anyone that I've lent it to really appreciates it. So I want to go through the process on how to make it. And we'll be using the red pinto, so it's the smaller of the two pintos. This is what I have available. You want to make sure that when you do this, we're going to be splicing using an iSplice here, that you use the spacers that DMM manufacturers designed for the pintos. You don't want to just put cordage right through these, through the beckets, and then splice it, because it'll put a bunch of pressure on the cheek plates and it could damage or break your pinto. So they manufacture spacers specifically. So this spacer here is for the pinto rig, and it will not fit in the regular pinto. Here's one designed for this pinto, and it slips in there perfectly. So that's what we're going to be using to manufacture this today. We'll also be using some splicing scissors, some whipping twine. I will be using a Yale basket fid for doing the berry here at the end on the diamond knot. And I'll be using a 9/16 fid. Now this is 3/8 10x Tech, but for doing all of these locking Brummel splices, I find just a tubular fid that's a little bit larger diameter than the rope allows me to be pretty quick with it. I want to make one that is 6 feet long, and I am going to have a little bit of waste in this, and that's okay with me. I want as much tail as I can possibly have in order to back splice and then tie this diamond knot. So I'm going to have a lot of tail on the back end. So the math that I'm using is I want a 6-foot sling. We're going to double that over, so it'll be 6 foot in total length. But we're going to double it because it's 2 strands of rope, so that's 12 feet. I always do plus 10% for overages and errors. So now we're sitting around 13 feet. And then I want 36 inches of tail double backed. So that's 72 inches total. Both sides of it, that's 144 inches. So we're going to roll forward with 22 feet of cordage. This is Samson 10x Tech. This is a 12 strand class 1 rope. The breaking strength of this is 6,100 pounds, and when it's priced appropriately, it will retain between 90 to 100% of its original breaking strength. So I use this for basal anchors as well. Overall, I like it. It's easy to work with, and it's pretty inexpensive. For those of you that are unfamiliar with splicing or new to it, hollow braid is a pretty easy rope to learn on. And for those watching, I went ahead and color coded both ends of my rope. I wouldn't normally do this. I did it with electrical tape so you guys can see alternating the sides and track it through the process. But you normally wouldn't do that. You would just use masking tape. Also, if you're new to splicing, one of the tricks that I used when I made a bunch of these T-pins here with the marked numbers or marked letters associated with the splicing directions. per the manufacturer, whether it's Teffelberger or Samson or Yale, whoever the case is, because a lot of them explain their splicing in letters and numbers. So this was easy for me to go ahead and just grab a pick of rope and slip that in there, and then I can follow along with the directions a lot easier. So it's something I recommend if you're new to splicing and learning. Yeah, so let's get into it. I have 22 feet of cordage here. I went ahead and found the middle. So both ends are off to my right. Here's the middle. And I went ahead and just pulled a needle with some whipping twine through it and then clipped it off. I'm not really a big fan of putting Sharpie or marks permanently on the rope. I think it's ugly. So it's just kind of a pet peeve of mine. So I'll usually do stuff like that to mark my location. We're going to take the pinto and the spacer, and we're going to place one end of cordage through it and feed it all the way through till we get to the middle. And there's our middle. So just kind of eyeball it, get it in there good. And the type of splice that we're going to be using to form these pockets, it's called a Brummel. So it's a locking splice, and it requires 2 splices from, one rope goes through the other, and then that rope goes through the other one. So you're alternating both sides of this rope, and they lock into place. So this is 2 Brummels here. As I pull on it, it can't come undone. You can do 3 if you want to get really carried away. I don't find it necessary for this, so I just do 2. So we're going to do our first locking Brummel, and I don't want too much of a tight eye because I don't want a bunch of pressure on the cheek plates of the pinto. So we will go ahead and go about 2.5 inches here, and we'll do our first one. I'm going to use a 9/16 tubular fid. I'm going to scrunch up the hollow braid, squish it together like that, and then place the tubular fid through it. Make sure I'm not catching any strands on the back side. And I'm going to take the tail. Well, there's 2 tails here, so I'm going to take the side of rope that is going to be going into this side. Place it in my tubular fid. Pull this through. So I'm going to pull this through until, call it zeroing out. So it's just going to essentially be exactly where I want it and equal lengths on both sides. So that was my red tail, I believe. Oops, let's see here. Yep, so that was my red tail that went through this side. So now this side here is going to be my yellow tail, and now my yellow tail is going to go through that side. So you're just going to alternate each side of the rope going through themselves. So to lock this off, I want to make sure I get my ropes nice and flat and even. I'm going to be stretching this out and laying it flat all the way through my Brummels to make sure that I'm going in and out on the same side or the same strands of rope. I find that it makes the rope lay a lot better and you don't get any weird twists in it. So I'm going to go 2 to 3 picks back, and then we're going to be pulling this guy into that strand here. So lay it over my fingers, scrunch it down. I'm 2 picks back from that zeroed point. Don't catch any strands. And now the yellow end is going to go through here. So splicing videos is not something I normally do. I have been splicing for a long time. A previous coworker of mine, he got into splicing, about 10 years ago, or he wanted to, and then we just kind of decided to get into it together. And I've been splicing ever since. I am a certified splicer. I do a lot of hollow braid, a lot of 16 strand, a lot of 24 strand. So it's been a passion, and it's something I enjoy in my pastime, and it's allowed me to make a lot of slings, or just rigging applications, rigging things, often. giving me all the tools that I really needed on the job, because I usually had all the slings I could never ever need available. Plus, it gives you the opportunity to try out something if you have an idea. You know, if you have an idea, oh, I wonder if this will work, or what about that? And you know how to splice, then you can build some pretty cool and unique things. So moving on, that's our first Brummel here. So that locks the pulley in place. And then we're gonna move on and start making the pockets. Because of the size of the diamond knot, I want the diamond knot to be able to pass through pretty easily, but have the pocket still be small enough to bite on the actual knot. So for this 3/8 hollow braid, I like about 3.5 inches. So place the corner of this first splice on my ruler or your tape measure. I'm going to find 3.5 inches. And we're going to go ahead and do our next Brummel starting at 3.5 inches. And we're going to pass this should be the red tail side through the yellow tail side. So 3.5 inches here, find that. Take my tubular fid, spread the strands apart, fit it right through the center. And we're going to repeat this process. I'm going to repeat this process until I get to 6 feet worth of pockets, and then we'll go ahead and move on to splicing and tying the diamond knot. So if you're familiar with splicing and you're not new to it and you know how to do Brummels, feel free to fast forward through the video. If it's something that's new to you and you're kind of intrigued in the process or my process, then I would encourage you to watch and listen to me talk, as I'm going to be talking through it. So we're still at about 3 to 3.5 inches. I'm okay with that. And now we're going to be swapping sides and placing this side through that side. I kind of just drape the rope over my finger, allowing the strands that I'm going to be poking into to be exposed. If you're using real large diameter hollow braid, I'll often tape the fids to each end, or tape multiple fids to each end, or use basket fids, and I'll hang the rope up and have it be vertical as I go along. I find that to be pretty quick. So that's our first pocket, and we're going to go through and continuously repeat process. So let's find us our 3.5 inches again. Make sure we're picking on the same side of the rope. So we're looking about right here. And check your splices often, you know, look at them as you're going through the process to make sure that you're not pulling the wrong side through itself. You know, I recommend you do it with each splice. Just stand back, take a look at it, make sure you didn't do something wrong, so that way you don't get really far into your splice and realize, oh, I made a mistake, and now it's a bunch of wasted time, wasted effort. All this tail can be hectic to deal with, but just manage the best you can. So I think I mentioned I've been splicing for about 10, 11 years maybe. It's been a great pastime. Something to keep your hands busy and something to learn a new skill set that's involved in, you know, ropes and all the work that we do. So these are turning out nice. I could go a little bit tighter, but it's okay. So again, finding our mark, which is what? Yep, 3.5 inches. Our target, and I actually ended up turning this over. Doesn't matter, but it may look a little bit different to you. So I'll turn it back over so it should look the same as when we started. So find our mark, our measurement here again at 3.5 inches. I've made some pretty unique rigging friction savers, if you will. So think of a traditional friction saver, but now replace the rings in a friction saver with rigging thimbles. So it can be installed just like a regular friction saver from the ground using a throw ball. It's worked out pretty good. One of the more funner and unique things that I've made. For those of you that don't know me, I've been doing arboriculture work for about, it's my 20th year this year of doing tree work. It's been really good to me. I quite enjoy it. Passionate about a lot of different things in it, including teaching. So 3.5 inches there. If you are placing your fid through the rope and you feel yourself catch a strand, like you feel some resistance there, just back out. You don't want to force anything through and then you know, have a picked inner strand be pulled out through your splice. That'll make it look ugly, and it can also reduce the strength of the splice. Also, if you don't have tubular fids, maybe you just have, you know, again, you're just starting out and you just have maybe a basket fid, you can, this hollow braid's really easy just to tape very, very tight, and then you can even take some scissors and cut it off at an angle and then tape it some more, and that can give you kind of a point to be able to use its own self as its fid to do these locking brummels. Now I know these pockets are looking pretty tight when you compare them to the knot, but after this rope's broken, it'll loosen and soften up a lot. So just food for thought. It can be kind of repetitive, monotonous, especially if you're doing a really large ultra sling. I typically don't do ultra slings out of anything beyond 3/8 and 1/2 inch. At that point, when you're talking about, you know, usually 1/2 inch slings, 5/8, 9/16, 1 inch slings, I'm usually making deadeye slings for rigging blocks. And in those situations where I'm going to be using a rigging block and not like a smaller pulley like the Pinto, I'm usually going to end up preferring something like a cow hitch anyways over using an ultra sling, because I'm going to want that block to stay tight to the trunk of the tree and not be long and dangly and potentially add a bunch of shock load to whatever it is that I'm rigging out. So again, just usually smaller things for something like this. I use these pocket slings a lot for mechanical advantage in the tree. If I have to lift some overhang up and build mechanical advantage while I'm up there. I also use it a lot if I happen to be by myself or short-handed and I want to lower down a section of wood or lower down branches and rig it down by myself and be able to retrieve my rope and back up to me. So the rated becket on the Pinto pulley makes that pretty easy. So right now I had trouble getting the fid through, so I'm going to zero it out, stretch it back out, and then squish it, separate the strands, and then try again in that same pick to make sure I'm not grabbing any interior strands. So we're a little over halfway done. I typically order my bulk cordage from like 10X Tech like this, or 10X from Westbur. Westbur is a company that is halfway local to me. I'm located in Washington. Westbur is based out of Northern Washington. And Samson, the manufacturer of this rope, 10X Tech, they are also based out of Washington, Ferndale, I believe. So I feel like they usually have pretty fair prices for bulk material. If you are new to splicing, I recommend that you do various different splices of the type of rope and diameter that you are going to find yourself working with the most, and then sending them in, probably to ARB session and letting his team break them. Do 3 splices of the same thing, send them in, let them break it, and send you the results, and see how your splices are faring up to the rated working load limited breaking strength of whatever rope you're splicing, to see how you're doing and making sure that you're retaining enough of the breaking strength of the rope. Especially when you start talking about like climb lines or lifelines, something that someone's going to be using for life support. I believe ARB session will also videotape and record the break for you, which is pretty cool. If you have ever had a car or a truck dynoed, it kind of looks like that same process on the screen. Start seeing your curves. The FID that I'm using here right now is a Samson manufactured FID made by Samson. They also publish their splicing directions online on their website, so you can download them for free, or you can purchase a splicing book if you want. But this set of FIDs, when I first started getting into splicing, I just kind of pieced together the FIDs. I think by most of them used off eBay. Just trying to see if I really liked it before I invested in it. And I'm at the point now where you see the workbench that I'm working on. You may have seen it in other videos as well. I have a full splicing setup, full splicing bench at home. I know Nick Arya also has quite the setup as well, and does a lot of splicing, a lot of technical stuff, lots of used rope, answers lots of questions, very skilled splicer. So if you're interested in more splicing, I encourage you guys to check out his stuff too. And for those watching, if you are not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would really appreciate it. At the time of this recording, we are on our way to 1,000 subscribers, which is awesome. I'm super grateful. I think that's awesome that that many people want to see what I have to teach. Okay, after this one, we're going to go ahead and give a measure and see what our overall length is right now. So we'll lock this one in and then measure. All right, so let's give this thing a measure here. So we're sitting at 3 feet. Sitting at 3 feet and 4 feet there. So we have 4 feet of pockets made, and you can see we have about 36, about 72 inches of tail left right there. And my target was 72 inches of tail left over at the end to be able to do the pocket sling, or excuse me, to do the diamond knot. So we're going to be a little short on that. So, you know, doing this process with the pockets does eat up a lot of rope. Let's do a few more here. We're probably looking at 1, 2, 3, probably 4 more locking brummels or pockets. Now you can do a little bit larger pockets. Probably, you know, you could probably get away with 4-inch pockets and tighten this up. And you don't have to do, you know, the spacing like I've done it. I just find the spacing appropriate for the size of the diamond knot once it's formed. And the longer the tails, you know, so potentially the more waste that you have, makes it exponentially easier forming the diamond knot. Because we're going to end up back splicing or burying the rope within itself, and it makes it very difficult to tie knots with. And the diamond knot is a halfway intricate knot. And we want to be able to dress it down nice. So the more tail that we have, the better. So this one here should put us at about 5 feet. So we'll probably end up doing one more and then we'll remeasure again. For those of you that have hung on this much through this video, I appreciate it. Hopefully you found my banter and talking to myself halfway entertaining. I'm not necessarily known for my comedic prowessness, but well, you know, some of my apprentices might say different. But trying to keep myself entertained and keep you guys entertained while I'm talking through this process of making this little doohickey here. All right, that pick was a little bit tighter than I've been doing. Let's see what it looks like. Oh yeah, that looks good. Okay, let's remeasure, see where we're at here. So that is 3 feet. Nope, we're almost there. So we are at 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet there. We are at 5.5 feet, so we're going to do one more. One more and then call it good on the pocket slings. And then we'll move on to burying the rope through itself and tying the diamond knot and then whipping it if you guys so choose. So last one here. If you guys have any questions about the process or why I'm doing what or how I'm doing it. Oh, and look at that. So I made a mistake here in this process on this last pocket. This side was the last one to exit. And so by right, it should have been opposite of the way that I chose to do it here, I think. Yep, so this one was the last one that I pulled through, which means this side should be the one to be pulling through. So I made a mistake, so let's fix it. You get to talking, not paying attention. What are you doing? So that means we gotta go back and measure, and we're gonna be sticking the rope through the opposite side that I was trying to do it in. There we go, this is looking better. This is looking better. Now, if you end up with not enough tail to really do the diamond knot, you can undo a few pockets. You'll lose a little bit of overall length from your target, but then at least it's not fruitless effort here. This one's giving me a little bit of struggle. There we go. And I don't like how that one picked, so I'm going to pick a different one. There we go, that looks better. If you don't come through perfectly in the center and split the strands evenly, then you'll see one side's heavier or strand heavy than the opposite side, and you want to be coming through the middle. Also, one thing I didn't mention, as I'm doing these locking brummels, the rope may have a little bit of a hockle or twist to it, so I have a tendency to kind of roll the rope in my hand as I'm pulling the rope through to ensure that it continues to lay flat and in the same orientation as when I started. So like there's a little twist right there, so I'm just going to go ahead and rotate the rope around to make sure that it's going to lay flat in that locking brummel. So let's see how much tail we have left to work with here. We've got 36 inches, 16 inches, so we're looking about a little over 40, a little over almost 4 feet, which is awesome. 36, 21, so a little bit longer on that side. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to splice this rope back into itself, like that. And so it'll be twice as thick as it is right now because we're going to bury this into itself. And we're going to do it on both sides, and that's going to allow us to have thicker rope in order to tie the diamond knot. So that way it makes sure it gets locked and stuck in these pockets. Go ahead and audio spike that to cut that out. So double back the rope, find the middle here, and then I'm going to be using the basket fid to do this splice. We're going to scrunch it up, softly insert the basket fid, making sure not to catch any of the strands. And you always want to keep your fids nice and clean and not chewed up on the end, so that way as you go through this process, you're not catching any of the internal strands. So this fid is about buried there. So we'll go ahead and place our rope inside the basket. And I will be placing some masking tape over this. Use masking tape, don't use electrical tape. I'm going to squish it on there good. And I'm going to continue feeding and milking the rope over this here until I get to my exit point, which is just going to be maybe about 2 inches below that last locking brummel. Somewhere in here, looks nice. And there's the fid coming out, and I'm going to go ahead and milk. So I'm going to milk and bunch up the rope and slip it over itself. And we're getting a little bit of resistance here. Just pulling back the tape a little bit. No, we're getting a little more resistance than should be there. So I'm going to carefully back out the fid and probably redo my tape here. Being careful not to catch any of the interior strands as I back this fid out. So right there, it's kind of bunching up. The tape's starting to fold back. So that's causing me a lot of resistance and pain. So we're going to take this tape off and redo this. Because I don't want to put too much pressure on it and run the risk of losing the tape on the inside of the rope. Because then you have tape on the inside of your rope, and then if you pull your splice out, you got to get past the berry with rope in, or with tape in there, and it's not the funnest thing. You can use a tubular fid to do this. I tend to prefer using a wire fid. Don't ask me why. I don't know. It's just my preference. Squish that in there. Let's give this another go. So again, about 2 inches there from our last Brummel. See if this will start slipping in here a little bit better. There we go. That's what we want. So I'm just milking and bunching up this rope, pulling it over itself, and we're going to continue to do that so we get the end of the rope out, and then continue to pull until I invert the rope in itself. So let's take the tape off. So as you can see, that was much better, much cleaner. That's what you want. It shouldn't be a lot of resistance, especially with this type of rope and just doing a simple berry like that. Use a little hook tool here to get under my tape. Oh, and I pulled a strand. That's okay. Get my tape off of here. Get the fid off. I'm going to go ahead and start zeroing this out and milking it back. Try and keep the twist even. And we're going to do this until it just inverts itself. And I can leave a fair amount of tail, or excuse me, I can suck a fair amount of tail out because I need this. Having this section here as long as possible is important. And we're going to end up cutting this off. So having a little bit of a loop down here is not that big of a deal. I rather waste rope out here on this side, or waste rope out here on this side and keep as much down here towards the throat as possible. So I'm going to pull this and back into itself just ever so slightly until this end buries itself, and then that'll give me as much length as I can to work with here. And I got to find the end of my electrical tape that I put on here, just special for you guys. Just special for you guys. And now the masking tape. Oh, a couple of strands of tape on here. All right, so that's that. Now, go back down here to where we inserted our fid, and I'm going to pull this just little bits at a time until it just buries. Ooh, tad bit more. Right there. Okay, so again, we're sitting at about overall, look at that, 2 inches, exactly. And I'm gonna go ahead and take a T-pin. You can use a splicing needle just to stick it in there, just so we don't lose it. And we're gonna go on and do the exact same thing to this side. So somewhere in there, wire fid, ever so slightly, insert the fid into the inside of the hollow braid. Hollow braid is one of the easier ropes, I think, to learn, you know, and start getting your mind around splicing. Rope in there. Tape. I tell you what, this, what is it, Tape Logic masking tape dispenser is a awesome investment if you are going to be getting serious about splicing. So, about yay. Fit coming out. All right, that one was super smooth. That's what we want. Or as my daughter would say, huzzah. Which I'm not really sure what that means. Okay, we're done with this guy. Okay, so same thing on this side. We're gonna get rid of the masking tape and electrical tape. Can't get my nail into there. Some good splicing scissors are also going to help out a lot in cutting rope. All right, oh, thought we were gonna get it all there. We didn't. We didn't get it all there. All right. Get off tape, go over there. Okay, so here we go. Bearing, or reverse bearing? Reverse bearing. It's a reverse bearing because we're not inverting the end inside of itself, which I might have said that earlier, but we're not doing that because we want this section to be as long as possible. All right, and we're gonna stick a pin in it. Ah, we don't need to stick a pin in it anymore. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and tie the diamond knot. All right, so now that we have our 2 strands, our 2 tail strands, we're gonna use these to tie the diamond knot. So I do have this in my shorts on my channel. If you wanna see, you know, more or different varieties of how to tie the diamond knot. We're gonna be using both strands to tie this. And we're gonna start with an underhand loop, such as that. And the strand on the right-hand side is gonna end up laying over the top, and then a bite of the same strand is gonna come through that first underhand loop that we made. And because this rope has rope buried in itself, it's very stiff, and the knotability is not very friendly. So what we should be looking or getting towards is this Celtic decorative knot here. It's kind of pretzel looking knot. At this point, similar to a Zeppelin bend, this rope is going to go over and through. This one is going to come underneath and through. So come through like that. Come through like yay. We're going to be working on the center here and start dressing this down. As I mentioned, the knotability of it isn't amazing. So be patient and take some time to work this knot down. And so we're going to suck as much out of it as we can. So I'm just running back slack from the brummel all the way towards the tip here. So identifying the strands, rotating them around in my hand, and just start working that slack out. All I'm doing is sucking this slack, getting this knot as tight as I can. And what you should be left with is a nice big button knot or diamond knot, such as that. That's going to be the one that, again, goes through the pocket, gets lodged. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to whip lock this. You don't have to, it's not necessary, but I do find it looks better when it's done. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So if you're curious on how to do that process, hang out, and we'll move on to that. And I'm gonna wait to cut these until I do that. It'll just be easier. Put some tape on here, hold them together. And this end's gonna end up getting cutting off. So that's my waist end. So some whipping twine. Got about 10 feet here. Probably more than necessary. All this tape is getting stuck to everything, because that's what tape does, just doing its job. Form a bite at the one end of your whipping twine. Place that bite on the rope, and then with the long side, start wrapping it. And I'm going to be wrapping down, layering my whipping twine as I do this. So you can see me starting to wrap around that bite. The rule of thumb is that your whipping should be the same, like, if I was to measure this in inches, it would be the same distance of the diameter of the rope, which this rope is 3/8. But I'm going to do it more than that because I find that it looks better on this rope if I do it more. Oh, and I messed up on that side. I missed a layer or missed a wrap. So go back through. And I'm probably like flopping this thing all over the place. You guys are like, stop moving it. Sorry for a splicing video. Yell at me if you want. All right. So we got about an inch there. Happy with that. Now I'm going to take this long tail, place it through that bite that we first started with, pull all my slack out, and then we're going to bury that from the tail on this side. And that's going to pull and bury it beneath all the strands that we wrapped. So don't pull it all the way out. Just pull it till it's buried. We're going to snip this end off. We don't need that one anymore. Now I'm going to take a splicing needle, probably this 16 strand needle. Find the center of all the slack that you have. And now we're going to go ahead and lock this in with the splicing needle. So this first one, I'm going to pull through. I'm going to go ahead and go through the middle here, and that's going to start this process. I'm going to pull through. I'm going to continue to pull all this slack through until I get to the tail end of the one that has all the slack, but I'm not going to pull the tail end all the way through. I'm just pulling it until I get to the tail end. There's the tail end. Now re-zero or center this out. Don't lose that tail. That's going to allow us to lock in 2 strands on our lock here. So just rotate the rope 90 degrees every time. Shove your needle through. If you have a sailmaker's palm, it makes this process easier and friendlier to your hands. If you're new to whip locking, where the whip lock is going into the rope, I'll tend to put my finger there, my thumb, to split those strands to keep them from twisting. So come back over here, shoot through the center. So again, where the whip lock is going, or where the twine is going, that's where I'm going to stick my thumb. Now I'm kind of hurrying through this. I could be doing a better job. Oops, missed my shot there a little bit. Okay, I'm happy with that one. Also, another tool that's very helpful, especially if you're doing climb lines, is parallel pliers. So Amazon, when you squeeze, they apply even pressure. Really, really good tool for getting a hold of needles and pulling them through during this process. Right now I'm using a needle that's big enough for me to get a hold of just fine. Now this last one, I'm going to actually go at a downward angle and start burying this whipping twine in the rope itself. So I'm actually going to go right back into that hole that I pulled it out of and do one more shot. Pull that through. So now that whipping twine is buried in itself. Snip that off. We're done with that. And melt these little ends here. All right, so it's whipped. Now we're gonna go ahead and cut that off. I'm gonna leave myself enough room to melt just a little end. I'm gonna leave the tape on there, and this melts down pretty well. Take my tape off. Okay, so that's the finished end of our diamond knot. And now we're gonna go ahead and lay some heat shrink on that. Let's see what size here. So let's see. This is 1.5 inch diameter. Heat shrink with adhesive. If you're going to buy heat shrink, I highly recommend you buy heat shrink with adhesive. And at this point, oops, you can put a little label on here with a little label maker if you want to. All right, go ahead and melt that heat shrink down. I left a little bit too much of a nipple here, so I'm going to cut that off because I don't like that. All right, and that's our finished diamond knot here. So overall, at this point, what we have is a 6-foot rigging sling made with the pinto pulley. Again, so choke, very nice. And the diamond knot. As this gets used and broken in, it'll slip through much easier as it softens up, but that places through and it locks in place well. Other applications for the diamond knot with hollow braids is in soft shackles, which is used in the maritime industry and the 4-wheel drive industry a lot. So soft shackles are also pretty awesome. But all in all, there you go. That is the process of splicing a Pinto Ultra Sling with a diamond knot finish. I found it very, very useful. So if you like this video, like, and if you haven't, if you don't like it, dislike it, I suppose. But also, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much. If you want to see more splicing stuff, let me know.